If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world.
A man walks into the most powerful room in Hollywood, not to hand out trophies, not to read off a teleprompter, not to play nice with the room. He walks in knowing that everything he is about to say is going to be recorded, broadcast to 200 million people, and replayed forever. He walks in knowing that the men and women sitting in front of him, the ones laughing nervously, the ones sipping champagne, the ones staring at their phones, they all have secrets. And he walks in knowing that some of those secrets are already out. That man is Ricky Gervais. And what happened at the 2020 Golden Globes was not a comedy performance. It was a warning shot. Today, we are going line by line through everything Ricky Gervais said at those award shows. We are going through the Epstein files that have been released. We are going through the court documents, the FBI intake reports, the flight logs, and the sworn survivor testimonies. And we are going through the behavior of the specific names he targeted, because those behaviors are now telling a story that is impossible to ignore. Before we go anywhere, ask yourself this. When was the last time you saw Tom Hanks on a red carpet? When was the last time Oprah Winfrey went out of her way to make sure the world could hear her voice? These are not rhetorical questions. Hold those thoughts, because by the end of this video, you are going to have a very clear answer. Let's get into it. Who is Ricky Gervais and why does it matter? To understand why this story starts with a comedian, you have to understand something that most people completely missed about what Ricky Gervais was doing at those shows. Ricky Gervais hosted the Golden Globes 5 times.
NBC clearly don't care either. 5th time.
5 times he stood on that stage. 5 times he looked directly into the eyes of the most powerful people in the entertainment industry. And 5 times he said things that nobody in that room wanted said out loud. Most people watching at home thought it was bravery. They thought it was edgy humor. They thought it was a rebel comedian cutting loose because he had enough money and enough clout that nobody could fire him. That is not what was happening. In multiple interviews before and after those hosting appearances, Gervais was explicit about his framework. He described the room, approximately 200 people, the richest, most connected, most powerful human beings in Hollywood, the people who greenlight movies, who run studios, who sign checks with 9 zeros. And then he described the audience watching at home, approximately 200 million people. People who don't have private planes, people who don't attend the after-parties, people who do not get invited to the island. His question to himself was simple: who do I serve tonight? And the answer, every single time, was the 200 million. But here is what is critical to understand. When Gervais said he only targeted public behaviors, he was not minimizing the material. He was being precise. He was telling you exactly what kind of a weapon he was using. He wasn't making things up. He was pointing at what was already there, already visible, already documented. And he was framing it in the only way that allowed him to say it on live television without getting cut off, sued, or blacklisted. Comedy was the delivery mechanism. The content was the truth. Joe Rogan, who has spent years operating in the same space of saying things that cannot be said on mainstream platforms, recognized it immediately. He saw what Gervais was doing, and he said it out loud. He called it swinging from the hip. He said Gervais was out there telling it like it is, on one of the biggest stages in entertainment, dressed up in punchlines so it could get past the gatekeepers. Now think about that phrase, getting past the gatekeepers. Why would the truth need to get past gatekeepers? Why would what is already in the public record need to be wrapped in a joke to be said out loud in that room? Because the people in that room are the gatekeepers, and Gervais had figured out the only door they couldn't close. The 2020 Golden Globes, the moment everything changed. January 5th, 2020, the Beverly Hilton, the 77th Golden Globe Awards.
Hello and welcome to the 77th Annual Golden Globe Awards, live from the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
Ricky Gervais walks out. He is wearing a tuxedo. He is smiling. And within the first few minutes, the room temperature drops about 20 degrees. He says it directly. No build-up, no warning. Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. The room goes silent. Now pay attention to what comes next, because this is the moment that changed everything. He looks out at the audience. He looks at the people who fly on private planes, and he says, "You like to fly on your own plane, didn't you?" Tom Hanks's face appeared on camera at that moment. The expression on his face, what most people described as uncomfortable, confused, or startled, became one of the most analyzed images on the internet in the months that followed. It has been screenshotted thousands of times. It has been discussed in comment sections, forums, podcasts, and social media threads across every platform for years. Now, let's be absolutely precise about what the documented record actually shows regarding Tom Hanks and the Epstein files, because precision is everything here. What is documented? A 2013 email from Epstein's publicist, Peggy Siegel, herself a documented part of Epstein's social circle, references Tom Hanks by name in a communication sent to Jeffrey Epstein. That email was written in 2013. Epstein had already been convicted in 2008, meaning that whoever was corresponding with Epstein in 2013 was doing so while knowing he was a registered sex offender. The context of that email, according to what has been made publicly available, suggests that Hanks may have been part of Epstein's social orbit during that period. There are additional claims circulating online that suggest his name appears in other documents. We are presenting those as unverified claims only. They have not been independently confirmed through publicly released, citable documents. You deserve to know the difference. What is not in dispute is his behavior since the files began dropping. Tom Hanks, the man who, for 4 decades, has been the definition of accessibility, warmth, and public engagement, has canceled a string of appearances. No press tours, no red carpets, no major interviews where audience members might ask unscripted questions. His team has reportedly specifically advised him to avoid events where the Epstein files might come up. Stop and think about that for a moment. This is Tom Hanks, America's dad, the most beloved actor in Hollywood history, a man whose entire brand, whose entire cultural identity is built on the idea that he is open, honest, and trustworthy. And he is deliberately avoiding situations where someone might ask him a question he doesn't want to answer. Ask yourself, why? His team pushed back publicly, attributing concerns about the files to what they described as anti-Trump sentiment. But that explanation has not satisfied the people who are asking questions. And those questions are not going away. The Epstein files, what they are and what they contain. Before we go further into specific names, we need to establish clearly what the Epstein files actually are, because there is enormous confusion about this online, and that confusion is being exploited by people on every side of the conversation. The Epstein files are a collection of court documents, FBI records, flight logs, and investigative materials connected to Jeffrey Epstein's federal case. They were ordered released as part of ongoing civil proceedings and Department of Justice declassification processes. They are real. They are legal documents. They exist. Here is the number you need to hold in your head for the rest of this video: 70 to 80%. 70 to 80% of significant portions of these documents remain either sealed or heavily redacted. Large black marks cover names, locations, dates, and details that have not been made public. When you hear someone say, whether in defense of a celebrity or in accusation, that a particular name is not in the Epstein files, that statement only reflects what is visible in the currently released unredacted portions. It does not reflect the full document set, not even close. This matters enormously. When people say, "My name isn't in there," they may technically be correct about the fraction of documents that have been publicly released. What they cannot say, what nobody can say, is that their name is not in the sealed and redacted portions that have not yet been released. Not being visible in 20% of the files is not the same as not being in the files. Now, survivor testimony. This is not speculation. This is not internet rumor. This is sworn public testimony from people who were there. Epstein survivor Lisa Phillips appeared before Congress and said directly, on record, that Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, entertainment, and industry. She described in detail how he used access and career advancement as leverage to trap young women. She said everyone in the industry knew. She said he was too powerful to stop. She said his value to the people around him made him untouchable. Think about what it means for someone to be that valuable to that many powerful people. Think about what kind of services would make a man untouchable among the most powerful people on the planet. Think about what those people would owe him and what they would do to keep that debt from becoming public. And then think about what a 70% redaction rate means in that context. Oprah Winfrey, the silence that speaks. For decades, Oprah Winfrey was the most prominent voice in American popular culture. Not just one of the most prominent, the most prominent. She built an empire on the idea that her platform was a force for truth. She would not stay quiet when something needed to be said. That was her brand. That was her identity. That was the thing that made her Oprah. So here is the question you need to sit with. Where is she now? Let's go through what is documented, and then let's go through what is not, because you deserve to know the difference. Documented fact. In 2013, Oprah Winfrey featured a Brazilian man named João Teixeira de Faria on her platform. She called his work miraculous. She described his spiritual healing abilities to her global audience with enthusiasm and personal endorsement. She gave him something that money cannot buy: credibility on the world's most trusted platform. That man, known internationally as John of God, was later convicted of sexually assaulting hundreds of women and girls. Some victims were reportedly as young as 9 years old. Across multiple convictions, his total prison sentence reached approximately 118 years. When this became public, Oprah issued a brief statement saying she empathized with the women coming forward. There was no deeper public accountability. There was no sustained engagement with the question of how this man had received her endorsement. The statement came, and then came the silence. Documented fact. Oprah Winfrey's professional and personal relationship with Harvey Weinstein is recorded across years of photographs, events, and professional collaborations. When his crimes became public, she said she couldn't find words adequate to the situation. There were also reports, denied by her spokesperson, that she contacted Weinstein after the story broke to offer him advice. One of Weinstein's accusers, actress Katie Noble, alleged in a lawsuit that Weinstein specifically used Oprah's presence and association to establish credibility when luring her into a situation where she was later assaulted.
Harvey Weinstein faces allegations of sex trafficking in a new lawsuit. Actress Katie Noble.
Now we move into unverified territory, and we are being explicit about that. Claims are circulating online alleging that Epstein survivors have identified Oprah as what some have called a broker, someone allegedly involved in connecting young women to Epstein and his wealthy associates. These claims are unverified. They have not been substantiated in the released court documents. We are presenting them solely as claims that are actively in public circulation. What is not a claim, what is fully observable and verifiable, is Oprah's behavior. The woman who spent decades making certain the world could hear her voice has gone extraordinarily quiet. She has made no major public statements about the Epstein files. She has not used her platform, which still exists, which still operates, which still reaches millions of people, to address the allegations that are being made about her by name. At the precise moment in history, when the network of names she was embedded in is unraveling in real time, the woman who has never been shy about sharing her opinion has chosen complete, deliberate, sustained silence. What would make Oprah Winfrey choose silence? That is not a rhetorical question. That is the question. Jay-Z, Beyoncé, and the number that changes everything. 10 million followers. Pause on that number. Jay-Z and Beyoncé, two of the most famous human beings alive. Two artists whose combined cultural footprint stretches across 5 decades of music, film, fashion, and activism. Two people whose fan bases are not casual. Their followers are devoted. Their followers are the kind of people who queue overnight for concert tickets, who buy the deluxe album edition, who defend them online against any and all criticism. 10 million of those people walked away. Not a bad algorithm week, not a bot purge. 10 million deliberate, conscious decisions by real human beings to unfollow, to disconnect, to distance. What triggered it? The Epstein files contain what has been described as a 2019 FBI crisis intake report. Let's be precise about what this document is. It is not a sworn statement. It is not a court filing. It is a log of an anonymous tip call made to the FBI tip line that was archived within the broader Epstein investigation file. Anonymous, unverified, not corroborated. We are presenting it exactly as it exists in the public record, as an unverified allegation. With that clearly stated, here is what that call allegedly contains. An anonymous woman alleged that around 1996, she was abducted from her home and woke up in what she believed to be Epstein's Florida property. She alleged she was drugged, leaving her memory fragmented, and she alleged that when she regained consciousness, two people were present in the room, Harvey Weinstein and Sean Carter, known to the world as Jay-Z. She alleged that Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulted her while Jay-Z was present in that room. Jay-Z has not been charged with any crime related to this claim. The claim has not been corroborated. We repeat, this is an unverified anonymous tip, but the 10 million people knew this document existed, and 10 million of them made a choice. Jay-Z has not publicly addressed the questions now circulating about his associations. His attorney has reportedly appeared in the orbit of Diddy's legal proceedings, a connection that adds another layer to a story that is already extraordinarily complex. In a widely discussed interview with Piers Morgan, artist Jaguar Wright made statements about Jay-Z and Diddy that she described as things she was not supposed to say publicly. She used the word monsters. She described their combined influence as something that has been crushing the industry for decades. These are Jaguar Wright's unverified claims, not established facts. But that episode reportedly became difficult to find online very shortly after it aired. Why would a television interview become difficult to find? That is a question worth sitting with. Leonardo DiCaprio and the pattern of low profiles. One of the most consistent targets of Gervais' jokes across multiple hosting appearances was Leonardo DiCaprio's well-documented pattern of dating women who are, without exception, significantly younger than him, and without exception, under 25 years old. The internet has made this a running joke, a meme, a predictable punchline. But Gervais was not making a meme. He was circling something deliberate. And when you understand what the documented record shows about DiCaprio's name appearing in the Epstein files, the jokes look entirely different.
Leonardo DiCaprio attended the premiere, and by the end, his date was too old for him, just like Jeffrey Epstein.
DiCaprio's name has reportedly appeared in the Epstein files more than once. The most widely discussed detail involves a reported attempt by Epstein to arrange a dinner between Leonardo DiCaprio and Woody Allen. That claim has been widely reported and discussed across multiple platforms. It has not been independently verified through a specific publicly releasable document. We present it as a widely circulating claim from the files discussion, not as established fact. DiCaprio has gone on record denying any personal relationship with Epstein. He has stated he never visited the island and had no direct connection to Epstein. That denial exists in the public record. But here is the context that makes people continue to ask questions. The files are overwhelmingly redacted. What has been released is a fraction of the total document set. Could additional details about DiCaprio exist in the sealed or redacted portions? Possibly. We do not know. And right now, we do not know is not the same as no. What we can observe is that DiCaprio, like several other names in this conversation, has maintained an unusually low public profile during the period of the file's release. That may mean nothing. It may mean everything. It is something you will have to assess for yourself with the information that is currently available. The Exodus. What happens when the powerful start to move? Now we need to talk about a pattern that is unfolding in real time, one that goes beyond individual names and starts to look like something systemic. Hollywood's elite are moving, not vacationing. Moving. Richard Gere recently sold his large Connecticut compound, and sold it at a loss.
Richard Gere's old Connecticut mansion is gone. The sprawling $11 million New Canaan estate for a luxury 9-home development.
When someone with a 9-figure net worth sells a property below market value, they are not trying to maximize their real estate portfolio. They are trying to complete a transaction quickly. His team says he wants to be closer to his wife's family in Spain. That may be entirely true, but the timing, tightly aligned with the period of the Epstein file releases, is the kind of coincidence that people are no longer willing to accept at face value. Eva Longoria has been quietly and progressively reducing the asking price on her Beverly Hills property. She has been dividing her time between Spain and Mexico. When wealthy people slash prices on their most valuable assets, they need to sell, not eventually, not when the market improves. Now, Rosie O'Donnell has moved to Ireland, and she made a public statement saying she will never return to the United States. Read that again. Never. She did not say she was taking a break. She did not say she was exploring options. She said she will never come back. You do not say, "I am never coming back," unless something specific and serious is driving that decision. You don't walk away from a country, from a career, from a network, from a life, because of a political administration you dislike. You leave because something is coming that you need not to be here for. Rosie O'Donnell has been a Hollywood insider for decades. She has attended the events. She knows the people. She has been in the rooms. The question of what she knows, what specific knowledge prompted that specific statement, is one her own words make impossible to ignore. Ryan Gosling and Eva Mendes have reportedly been exploring property in London. They have not yet left, but the fact that they are looking at this specific moment in time is the kind of signal that people who have been watching this story closely are noting with growing concern. Now, we need to be fair. People sell houses, people relocate, people move to Europe for 100 entirely innocent reasons that have nothing to do with federal investigations. We are not stating that these moves are proof of anything. What we are observing is the pattern. Multiple high-profile individuals making similar financial and geographic decisions simultaneously during the period of the Epstein file releases. Patterns do not prove guilt, but patterns are worth examining honestly. And when you look at this one, it is very difficult to describe it as random. Gervais knew the through line. Here is what you need to understand about the through line of this entire story. Ricky Gervais has been doing stand-up comedy and entertainment for over 30 years. He has moved in and around the industry for decades. He is not an outsider throwing rocks from the internet. He is someone who attended the parties, who was invited to the rooms, who had access to the conversations that never make it onto a red carpet. When he stood on that stage in 2020 and said Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself, when he looked out at the room and asked who liked to fly on private planes,
Man who wants to kill himself just like Jeffrey Epstein. I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
He was not guessing. He was not playing edgy comedian for shock value. He was someone who had seen the machine operate from the inside, and who had finally decided that the 200 million people watching at home deserved to know what he knew. He wrapped it in jokes. He had to. Comedy was the only weapon that couldn't be confiscated at the door. You cannot sue a comedian for a punchline. You cannot blacklist a man who has already told the industry what he thinks of them. You cannot silence someone who has already decided that being silenced is not an option. Every name he targeted, every joke he pointed like a finger, every nervous laugh he watched ripple across that room. It was deliberate, it was specific, and it was based on knowledge, not speculation. And now, one by one, those names are going quiet. They are canceling appearances. They are selling properties below market value. They are moving to countries without active extradition proceedings for the specific charges that some of them may be facing. They are saying things like, "I will never come back," and hoping nobody asks the obvious follow-up question. Ricky Gervais was watching. He was pointing, and he is not surprised by any of this. What the redacted portions may contain. This section requires absolute clarity about what we know and what we don't, because the stakes of getting this wrong are too high. What we know, 70 to 80% of significant portions of the Epstein files remain sealed or redacted. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is publicly documented. The black marks are visible in the released portions of the documents. The sealed sections are acknowledged by the courts that have ordered their partial release. What we know, the surviving victims of Epstein's network have said publicly, on record, under oath, that the full scope of his connections extends far beyond what has been made visible so far. They have said that his reach went to the top of entertainment, fashion, politics, and finance. They have said that people in positions of power knew and chose to look away because his access and connections made him valuable. What we don't know, What is in the remaining sealed and redacted portions? What is not speculation? That the people whose names appear in those documents know what is in them, even if the public doesn't yet. Think about what it means to know that a document exists, that it contains your name, that the only question is whether a judge will order it unredacted, that you have no control over the answer. Now think about what you would do if you were in that position. Would you keep showing up at red carpets? Would you keep giving interviews? Would you keep maintaining the public persona that you have spent decades building, knowing that at any moment, a court filing could change everything? Or would you start getting very quiet? Would you start relocating your assets? Would you start putting physical distance between yourself and the country where those court proceedings are taking place? The behavior we are observing from certain names in this conversation is consistent with people who know what is in those documents. That is not an accusation. That is an observation. And observations have to be named honestly. The framework, what Gervais gave us. Joe Rogan described it best when he talked about what Gervais was doing at those shows. He called it telling the truth, dressed up as entertainment so it could get past the gatekeepers.
Films Judi Dench licking her ass. The comedian, however, also by noting it was his 5th time hosting.
That framework is the key to this entire story. We live in a media environment that is controlled at the highest levels by the exact same network of people who are now going quiet, going overseas, and going defensive. The same people who sat in that room at the Golden Globes. The same people whose names appear, in various contexts to various degrees, in documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein's network. This is not a coincidence. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is how power protects itself. It controls the platforms through which information travels. It controls who gets to ask questions, which questions get asked, and which answers get amplified. Gervais found the crack in that system, the one place where you could say something true, something specific, something pointed at specific people, and not be immediately suppressed. Because comedy has a protection that journalism doesn't. A joke exists in a liminal space between accusation and entertainment. It doesn't require a fact check. It doesn't require a legal review. It doesn't require an editor's approval. It just requires an audience. And Gervais had 200 million of them. What he was doing in that room was not performance. It was testimony, delivered in the only language that the room couldn't object to, on the only stage where they couldn't cut his mic, in the only format that the gatekeepers couldn't confiscate. 5 times he stood on that stage. 5 times he looked those people in the eye. And 5 times he told the 200 million people watching at home exactly what kind of room they were looking at. He was right, and the story is still unfolding. Where we are right now. The Epstein files are real. The releases are ongoing. The redactions are real. The sealed portions are real. And the behavior of the people whose names keep appearing in this conversation is real and observable and documented. Here is what the documented record currently shows. Stated precisely, Tom Hanks's name appears in a 2013 email sent to Jeffrey Epstein by Epstein's publicist, 5 years after Epstein's conviction. The context of that email suggests a social connection. His subsequent withdrawal from public appearances, specifically during the period of the file's release, is documented and observable. Leonardo DiCaprio's name has reportedly appeared in the Epstein files, with an alleged arrangement involving a dinner with Woody Allen. That specific claim is widely reported but not independently verified through a publicly releasable document. DiCaprio has denied any personal connection to Epstein. An anonymous FBI tip log, archived within the Epstein investigation file, contains an allegation naming Jay-Z as present.
All a part of this Epstein file. Had Jay-Z on the couch and he had the girls off there freaking off.
During an alleged assault by Harvey Weinstein at what the anonymous caller believed to be Epstein's Florida property. This is unverified. Jay-Z has not been charged with any crime related to this claim. 10 million followers walked away from Jay-Z and Beyoncé during the period this document entered public conversation. Oprah Winfrey has documented associations with 2 convicted predators, John of God and Harvey Weinstein, including an endorsement of John of God on her platform that preceded his conviction for assaulting hundreds of victims, some as young as 9 years old. Unverified claims circulating online allege a connection to Epstein's network. What is verified is her complete sustained silence during the period when her name keeps appearing in this conversation. Multiple high-profile individuals have made simultaneous, significant financial and geographic decisions during the period of the file's release. You have the information. You decide what it means. The question that remains. Here is the question that this entire story keeps coming back to. The one that Ricky Gervais was pointing at every single time he stood on that stage. How does a network like Epstein's operate for decades? How does a man build an island, acquire a network of high-profile associates, and run an operation at that scale without anyone who knew what was happening choosing to say something? The answer is what Gervais was performing in real time at the Golden Globes year after year, because somebody knew. Lots of people knew. They had been to the parties. They had been on the planes, they had attended the dinners, they had been in the rooms, and they had made a calculation, the same calculation that powerful people have been making since the beginning of organized power, which is that the cost of speaking up was higher than the cost of staying silent. That is not a question of evil. That is a question of incentives, when being complicit is the price of access. Access to the studios, the green light meetings, the A-list connections, the private planes. Most people pay it, not because they are uniquely monstrous, because the system is designed to make silence the rational choice. What Gervais understood, what made him genuinely dangerous to the people in that room, was that his incentives were different. He didn't need their approval. He didn't need their green light. He didn't need the access that required him to keep quiet. He had already built everything he needed to build without their permission. And so he could afford to say the thing that everyone in the room knew and nobody was supposed to say out loud. That is what you are watching when you watch those clips. That is what you are watching when you see Tom Hanks's face in that room. That is what you are watching when names you have trusted your entire life start going quiet, going overseas, going dark. You are watching the moment when the cost of staying silent became higher than the cost of speaking. Ricky Gervais saw it coming. He stood in that room and pointed at it in the only language they couldn't stop. And now the world is watching it unfold in real time. Here is what we know for certain. The Epstein files are real. The releases are ongoing. 70 to 80% of the documents remain sealed or redacted, and we have not seen everything yet. The survivor testimony is on record, not on forums, not on social media, but in sworn public testimony before Congress. And the behavior of the specific people that Ricky Gervais targeted, for years, specifically by name, at the most powerful platform available to him, is documented, observable, and getting harder to explain away with every passing week. We have been precise in this video about what is verified and what is not. Court documents are labeled as such. Anonymous tip logs are labeled as such. Unverified claims are labeled as such. You are not being asked to take anything on faith. You are being asked to look at what is already in the public record and ask yourself what it means. What is not debatable is this. Ricky Gervais was in that room. He was watching. He was listening. He knew what he knew, and he made a choice to stand on the biggest stage available to him and use the one tool that the gatekeepers couldn't take away, to tell 200 million people what was happening in that room, while the people in that room watched and could not say a word. The people he pointed at are not laughing now. The files are still dropping. The redactions are still lifting. The pattern of behavior from Hollywood's most powerful figures is still unfolding in real time. Stay close to this story. Ask the questions that aren't being asked on mainstream platforms. Share this video if you believe the truth deserves more exposure than it's getting. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know what you see in this pattern, what questions you're asking, and what names you think we need to be looking at next. And subscribe, because this story is far from over. The files are still dropping. And Ricky Gervais, for once, is not the most interesting person in the room. What name surprised you most in this video? Comment below. Subscribe for ongoing coverage of the Epstein file releases.